Most women would have screamed. Most women would have felt the blood drain from their faces, their hands shake, their lungs forget how to work. Most women would have turned and fled, letting humiliation chase them down the hallway while rumor finished the job. I didn't. Because I wasn't most women. I was Aria Vale, chief envoy of the Northern Coalition. The woman council sent into rooms already poisoned. The one who signed ceasefires while generals still had their fingers on triggers. The one who learned very young that emotion was a liability and control was survival. So when I pushed open the door to the Skyfall Summit penthouse and saw my fated mate, the Alpha King of the Meridian clans, standing half undressed while another woman lingered far too close, I didn't cry. I stepped inside. And I locked the door. The bolt slid home with a heavy, metallic finality. Click. The sound echoed through the massive suite like a gunshot. They weren't trapped in here with me. I was trapped in here with them. And I had never been more dangerous. Welcome to Floxy's Shifter Romance Tales. Before we dive in, I'd love your support. Kindly hit the likes button and let the story hit 200 likes. Also, subscribe, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Your engagement means the world to me. Now, let's begin. The penthouse was carved into the mountainside like a throne. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed a sky choking with storm clouds. Wind screamed outside the windows, rattling the steel shutters. The air smelled like old money and ozone and the artificial sweetness of a woman who believed scent could compensate for relevance. King Ronan Ashborne stood near the glass wall, one hand resting on the back of a leather chair, dark hair loose around his face. His jacket was gone. His shirt hung open at the collar like he hadn't bothered finishing a thought. He didn't move when he saw me. Didn't step back. Didn't reach for excuses. He only turned his head slowly, and smiled. Across from him stood Lyra Voss. Western blood. Political royalty. Beautiful in the precise, calculated way of women raised to be weapons. Her silk dress caught the low light like liquid metal. Her mouth curved as if this were a scene she'd rehearsed. Aria, she said softly, her voice honeyed. This is a private meeting. I didn't look at her. My gaze stayed on him. On the man the moon itself had tied to my soul. On the man I had spent 5 years refusing to want. Ronan lifted a crystal glass to his lips, unhurried. Studying me the way a wolf studies a challenge rather than a mistake. You look composed, he murmured. Most women wouldn't. I'm not most women, I replied. My heels crossed the marble floor, steady, measured. Negotiator pace. Control pace. And you and I had an agreement. He set the glass down. You had expectations, he corrected. I listened. Anger sparked beneath my ribs, not hot, not wild. Cold. Surgical. I stopped 6 feet from him. I walk in and find you half undressed with a political rival in your private suite, I said. Do you understand what that looks like? Yes. Do you understand what it does to every negotiation I touch? Yes. Then explain to me, I said quietly, why you would sabotage months of diplomacy for this. Ronan's gaze didn't leave mine. But his voice cut sideways. Lyra. She straightened slightly, her lips parting. You should go. Her brows drew together. Ronan. He finally looked at her. The shift was subtle. But lethal. Leave. She swallowed. Her eyes flicked to me, measuring, weighing, calculating. I met her stare. And smiled. Unless, I added calmly, you'd like your father to receive a detailed report about how today's border security funding negotiations collapsed because his daughter refused to exit a private royal suite. The color drained from her face. She turned back to Ronan. He said nothing. Did nothing. That silence was permission. Lyra gathered her clutch with stiff fingers and brushed past me, her perfume scraping the air like a claw. The door closed. The lock held. Now there were only 2 of us. The negotiator. And the king. You always were efficient, Ronan murmured. I didn't respond. I walked further into the room, letting the space swallow us. The storm outside threw shadows across his face, breaking him into angles and firelight. Why? I asked, was she here? Because you weren't. A simple answer. Too simple. We had an agreement, I said. Professional distance until the formal bond ceremony. Mutual respect. No politics in the personal. No personal in the politics. He stepped closer. You had a strategy. I accepted it. I laughed, once, sharply. I find you half-dressed with a rival female adjusting her clothing, I said. And your defense is semantics. Not semantics, he replied. Law. My jaw tightened. Don't. Wolf law, he continued calmly. Ancient law. Until a mate is claimed, the bond is dormant. Inactive. Unratified. You are quoting statutes at your soulmate. I am responding to how my soulmate treats me. The words struck harder than I expected. I crossed my arms. I treat you with respect. You treat me like a portfolio risk. Silence. Outside, thunder rolled across the peaks. I came here to finalize the Eastern Corridor Treaty, I said. I came here to prevent 3 territories from sliding into war. And instead, I walk into a staged scandal. Staged, he repeated softly. So you admit it? Yes. I stared at him. And you still won't tell me why? Ronan stopped an arm's length away. Close enough that I could smell rain and smoke and something darker under it, something that made my pulse stutter. Because, he said quietly, indifference from a mate is colder than betrayal. I opened my mouth to answer. And the building alarms exploded. Red lights flared across the ceiling. Steel shutters began to descend. A mechanical voice filled the suite. Code black weather event. Hurricane force winds. Facility lockdown engaged. All exits sealed. The floor vibrated. The world outside vanished behind armored steel. I turned toward the door. Pulled the handle. Nothing. Ronan exhaled behind me. Well, he said mildly. That's inconvenient. I faced him slowly. You planned this. I anticipated the storm. You engineered a cage. I removed your exits. The distinction sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cold. Why did you cheat? I demanded. He tilted his head. I didn't. Then what was that? Ronan's eyes darkened. A provocation. For what? His voice dropped. For this. For you. For the moment you finally stop negotiating around me, and start confronting me. The Skyfall summit had been designed to impress. Glass walls. Heated marble floors. Smart lighting that adjusted to mood. A luxury outpost carved into a mountain for the powerful to pretend they were gods. When the lockdown engaged, it became something else. A vault. Steel slid into place over the panoramic windows with a sound like a guillotine lowering. The air pressure shifted. A low mechanical hum vibrated through the walls as magnetic locks sealed every door. The wind outside howled, violent and relentless, throwing snow against the shutters like fists. And I stood in the center of the penthouse suite with the one man I had spent my entire career refusing to need. You planned this, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. It was the voice I used when negotiations were one sentence away from war. Ronan Ashborne didn't answer immediately. He moved instead, slow and unhurried, toward the wet bar. The soft lights caught the angles of his face, the hard line of his jaw, the crown-shaped scar near his temple earned in a border uprising years ago. He poured himself another drink like the world hadn't just shrunk to 4 walls and 2 souls. I anticipated the storm, he said finally. Ice clinked in crystal. I watch weather reports. You engineered a cage. He turned slightly, glass in hand. I removed your exits. The distinction sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with temperature. You manipulated the timing, I said. The suite. The meeting. Lyra's presence. My arrival window. Yes. He didn't dodge it. Didn't soften it. Yes, he repeated. I paced. The carpet muted my footsteps. Too soft. Too controlled. Everything about this place was designed to absorb impact. Do you have any idea what you just jeopardized? I asked. 3 regional coalitions. 6 trade corridors. A ceasefire that took me 8 months to assemble. Ronan took a sip of his drink. I jeopardized negotiations, he said. You jeopardized us. I stopped. Don't, I warned. Don't what? He countered quietly. Say the thing neither of us wants to say? You stood half-dressed with another woman in your suite, I snapped. And now you're reframing this like a philosophical exercise. I stood unclaimed. That is a technicality. No, he said. It's the foundation. I laughed sharply. You're hiding behind archaic pack law. I'm answering in the only language you've allowed. I stared at him. You quote statutes. You schedule appearances. You route our conversations through aides. You treat the bond like a diplomatic merger, he continued. So I responded accordingly. By humiliating me. By confronting you. You weaponized jealousy. I tested territory. The word struck something old and ugly in my chest. This isn't instinct, I said. This is strategy. Yes. And you think that makes it better? I think it makes it honest. Silence pressed down between us. The wind slammed the building. I moved to the window on instinct, stopping inches from the armored shutter. Beyond it, nothing but storm and void. You brought her here knowing I was coming, I said. Yes. Knowing what it would look like. Yes. Knowing it would provoke me. Yes. Knowing it could fracture negotiations. Yes. I turned slowly. And you still did it. Ronan met my eyes. Because indifference from a mate is colder than betrayal. The words landed not like an argument. But like a confession. I opened my mouth. Closed it. You walked into this suite tonight wanting a signature, he said. Not me. Not us. A document. That document prevents bloodshed. And our bond is bleeding. I felt it then. Not anger. Something more dangerous. Being seen. You don't know what you're talking about, I said. I know exactly, he replied. You hide in responsibility because responsibility doesn't abandon you. Responsibility doesn't choose someone else. Responsibility doesn't die. The air felt thinner. I am not avoiding you, I said. I am protecting what we are. You are preserving what's convenient. I am preventing disaster. You are preventing vulnerability. Silence. The lights dimmed slightly as the building shifted to emergency systems. I crossed my arms. We are fated, I said. Not bonded. We are destined. Not chosen. The distinction settled like a weight on my chest. You really believe this excuse is what I walked into? I asked. I believe, Ronan said slowly, that what you walked into was a mirror. A staged scandal. A controlled provocation. You used Lyra. Yes. She is a political fault line. Yes. She has destabilized negotiations before. Yes. And you still used her. Yes. I stared at him. You are unbelievable. I am exhausted. The word hit harder than all the rest. Ronan exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand across the back of his neck. I have counsels, he said. Advisors. Strategists. Generals. Every conversation I have is filtered through need. He looked at me. Even you. That is not true. You didn't come here tonight for me, he said. You came for the corridor treaty. If fate hadn't bound us, I would have been another signature to you. That is not fair. It is accurate. I shook my head. You don't get to reduce 8 months of diplomacy to personal neglect. You don't get to reduce a soul bond to a scheduling problem. We stared at each other. The storm raged. I didn't cheat, Ronan said again. Because cheating requires a vow. And you have never taken me. The word scraped something raw. We are fated mates. And you treat me like a liability. I treat you like a king. And I am tired of being a crown before I am a man. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. More fragile. I turned away first. I am leaving, I said. The door didn't open. The magnetic seal glowed faint blue. The building had already chosen. I closed my eyes once. A single breath. Then I turned back. How long, I asked, until this storm clears? 36 to 72 hours. Then this conversation ends, I said. Ronan studied me. No, he replied quietly. After that, it changes. Nothing changes because of forced proximity. Everything does. You think locking me in here will make me surrender? No. He stepped closer. I think removing your escape routes will make you stop pretending you don't want to. I felt the truth of that like a bruise. You think I don't want you? I asked. I think, he said, that you want control more. The word struck dead center. I turned away again, this time not toward the door, but toward the long corridor leading to the east wing. I will use the guest suite, I said. We will remain professional. As you wish. I took 3 steps. Then his voice followed me. You asked why I did this. I stopped. I did it, Ronan said, because the only time you ever look at me like a maid is when you're angry. I didn't turn back. Because he was right. I walked down the east wing corridor without looking back. That mattered. Because instinct wanted me to turn. Instinct wanted me to measure his expression, catalog his posture, gauge whether I had won or lost whatever invisible contest had just taken place in the living room. But I had spent my life training myself not to obey instinct. Instinct makes you reactive. Instinct makes you predictable. Instinct is what men in power use against women who survive in rooms like mine. So I walked. Each step controlled. Each breath counted. Each heel strike a reminder that I still owned my body, my direction, my silence. The corridor lights were low, motion activated, spilling amber pools across dark wood and polished stone. Every few feet, art pieces hung on the walls, abstract metalwork, oil paintings of storms and wolves and ruined cities. Ronan's taste. Controlled chaos. Strength framed as culture. I reached the guest suite. Palm to sensor. The door slid open. And I stopped. The room was wrong. Not hotel wrong. Not someone pre-stocked this wrong. It was personal. Too personal. The suite was enormous, divided into living area, sleeping space, and bath, all draped in muted blues and warm neutrals. Soft lighting glowed from hidden panels. A fire burned low in the stone hearth. And laid across the center of the bed was my luggage. Not a generic overnight bag. My case. The one I never checked. The one I carried myself. Beside it, folded neatly, were my clothes. My real clothes. The charcoal slacks I wore when I needed to intimidate. The soft gray sweater I only wore when I couldn't sleep. My running shoes. My black silk sleep set. On the side table sat my face cream. The obscure imported one I ordered through a private distributor because the company refused to ship outside the Eastern Territories. Next to it, a single paperback. The old thriller I'd once mentioned, in passing, years ago, during a late negotiation break. And on the small counter by the sitting area. A bottle of Verdant Coast Red. The one vineyard I trusted. The one wine I drank only when I was too tired to pretend I wasn't. I didn't move. Didn't step inside. Didn't breathe. Cold slid through my chest. This wasn't preparation. This was research. This wasn't hospitality. This was observation. You stalked this, I said. My voice echoed slightly. I hadn't realized he'd followed me. Ronan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I told you, he replied quietly. I was done waiting for appointments. I turned slowly. This isn't a guest room, I said. This is a reconstruction. Comfort, he corrected. This is surveillance. This is knowing my mate. This is control. This is consideration. You had my belongings brought here without my consent. I had them transported from your summit suite, he said. By staff who already handle your effects. You didn't ask. No. You didn't inform. No. You didn't consider that maybe I don't want to walk into a room that looks like a memory. His jaw tightened. I considered, he said. I decided you needed to stop pretending we are strangers. I laughed once, brittle. You built a psychological environment. I created a space where you don't have to perform. This is a trap. This is a mirror. We stared at each other across the threshold. Was the storm planned too? I asked. Ronan didn't blink. No, he said. But I would have found another way. The honesty of it was worse than denial. Why? I demanded. Why not speak? Why not confront me? Why escalate to this? Because you don't respond to requests, he said. You respond to crisis. The words landed. Painfully accurate. I had built my career on that truth. You engineered a crisis, I said. Yes. And if it had backfired? It didn't. Because I'm here, he replied. And you didn't leave. I turned back to the room. Every item was placed with precision. Not obsessive. Strategic. Like a field operative constructing a safe house. You even chose my wine, I murmured. I've watched you, Ronan said. 4 years. That is not comforting. It is honest. That is not romance. It is devotion. I stepped inside. The door slid closed behind me. The sound felt final. I set my bag down slowly. You had no right. I had every right. You abducted my environment. I adapted it. You violated my autonomy. I challenged it. I exhaled sharply. I am not staying in a room designed by you. You are staying in a room designed for you. I turned back to him. I am not one of your provinces. And I am not one of your contracts. We stood 6 feet apart. Neither yielding. Neither softening. The fire cracked in the hearth. Outside, the storm battered the mountain. How long, I asked, have you been collecting this information? Ronan hesitated. A fraction. Since I realized you were never going to give it to me voluntarily. The answer lodged under my ribs. You could have asked. I did. When? Every time I tried to move past formalities. Every time I tried to pull you into a real conversation. Every time I refused to speak through assistance. And you thought this was better? I thought this was necessary. Silence. I walked to the bed. Ran my fingers over the folded sweater. My sweater. You remember what I wear to sleep, I said quietly. I remember what you wear when you stop pretending. I straightened. You planned the entire evening. I prepared for a confrontation. You placed Lyra in the room. Yes. Knowing what she represents. Yes. Knowing how that would strike me. Yes. And when I demanded she leave? You proved me right. About what? That you care. Anger flared again. You could have just asked. And you would have scheduled me a meeting. The truth of it burned. I had done that. More than once. I am not incapable of emotion, I said. I didn't say you were. You are painting me like some cold administrator. No, he said quietly. I am saying you built armor so effective even your mate can't get through it. Silence stretched. I turned away from him, walking further into the room. Every step felt like a concession. I will stay here, I said. Because the building is sealed. Not because you staged this environment. As you wish. And we will remain on separate sides of whatever this is. He nodded. Agreed. And you will not enter this room without my consent. I wouldn't. And you will not touch me. He inhaled slowly. Then exhaled. That, he said, is where we need terms. I turned. What terms? Ronan pushed off the doorframe. Took 2 steps closer. Not invading. Just closing space. I will not touch you, he said. Unless you ask. I felt the words before I processed them. What? I will not initiate physical contact, he continued. No proximity. No persuasion. No cornering. No accidental brushes. Why? Because you deserve agency, he replied. And because I refuse to become the thing you fear. And what is that? A man who needs power to be chosen. The air shifted. And in exchange? I asked. In exchange, he said, you don't hide. Define hide. No assistance. No buffering. No titles. No strategic language. And if I choose silence? Then we sit with it. And if I choose distance? Then I honor it. And if I choose to leave the room every time you enter a space? He held my gaze. Then I will let you. The terms unsettled me. This wasn't a trap. It was worse. It was removal. Removal of every shield I'd perfected. You think this is fair, I said. I think this is necessary. You think this will make me want you? No, he replied. I think this will show you whether you already do. Silence pressed again. 3 days, I said. Then this ends. 3 days, he agreed. He stepped back. This suite is yours, he added. I'll remain in the West Wing. And the common spaces? We share. Professionally. As you wish. I nodded once. Ronan turned to leave. Then paused. You asked why I did this, he said over his shoulder. I did it because the only time you ever look at me like a mate is when you're angry. The door slid closed behind him. The room felt larger. And smaller. At the same time. I stood alone in a space constructed from my preferences. My routines. My vulnerabilities. And for the first time since I was 19 years old and standing in a council chamber full of men who wanted to test me, I didn't know what strategy applied. I walked to the sitting area and lowered myself onto the sofa. The leather was warm from the fire. My wine waited on the counter. Unopened. I didn't touch it. Instead, I stared at the wall. At the way the light shifted. At the fact that he had memorized the details I had never offered. That he had known the color of my sleepwear. The books I read in private. The taste I reached for only when I was too tired to perform. This wasn't seduction. This was intimacy. The kind that didn't ask. The kind that observed. The kind that built quiet maps of another person's life. My chest felt tight. I didn't know whether to be furious. Or unsettled. Or grateful. I rose and moved through the suite slowly, cataloging what he'd arranged. The seating angle. The lighting warmth. The silence level. He had even adjusted the temperature slightly higher than the rest of the penthouse. He knew I hated cold rooms. I stopped in the bedroom doorway. The bed was enormous. Inviting. Neutral. No roses. No candles. No performative romance. Just space. I realized something then. He hadn't built a trap. He had built a waiting room. For a choice. I sank onto the edge of the bed. Pressed my palms into the mattress. The storm roared outside. And for the first time since I was a girl sitting alone in embassy housing while my mother negotiated my father's release, I wasn't sure control was the same thing as safety. And that terrified me. The second day of confinement did not arrive gently. It crept in. Silent. Gray. The storm outside had not weakened. If anything, it had grown more vicious. Wind hurled itself against the mountain like something desperate to be let in. Snow packed itself into every exposed surface. The sky beyond the armored shutters was nothing but sound and pressure and cold. I woke before the lights brightened. My body already tense. My mind already working. Negotiators do not wake slowly. We wake assessing. Temperature. Silence. Threat level. Internal state. And something was wrong. Not pain. Not illness. Heat. It started beneath my ribs. A low, spreading warmth that had nothing to do with the climate system and everything to do with biology. I closed my eyes. Counted breaths. 1. 2. 3. The warmth intensified. Not comfort. Urgency. A pulsing restlessness that slid through my bloodstream and lodged deep in my core. No. I knew this sensation. I had studied it. I had dismissed it. Mating heat. The dormant bond's failsafe. A physiological override triggered by prolonged proximity between fated mates who refused to complete the bond. In short. Claim or burn. I sat up slowly. The room tilted. Heat flushed through my skin like a fever without illness. My senses sharpened. Too much. I could hear the wind scrape metal outside. The distant hum of the building's generators. The faintest echo of movement from the west wing. Him. My mouth went dry. Every breath filled my lungs with the phantom trace of cedar and smoke and something darker that was not scent but memory. No. I pressed my palm flat to my sternum. I did not surrender to biology. I had built a career on overriding impulse. I slid my feet to the floor. The carpet felt wrong. Too warm. Too soft. Every nerve ending flared like it had been wired to static. Stand. Shower. Cold water. Shock the system. I crossed the suite quickly, keeping my breathing controlled. The mirror caught me as I passed. Flushed. Pupils dilated. Skin too bright. I didn't stop. The water had barely turned lukewarm before the pipes shuddered. Then sputtered. Then died. I stared at the useless faucet. Of course, I whispered. I braced both hands on the marble counter. The heat deepened. Not just temperature. Need. The primitive insistence of a bond demanding resolution. I straightened slowly. And that's when it hit. The scent. Not imagined. Not memory. Him. Ronan's presence washed over my senses like a drug. Not in the room. In the building. Close enough. My knees weakened. I gripped the counter harder. This was not desire. This was biological coercion. And I hated it. I hated that my body had a vote. I hated that some ancient mechanism thought it could rewrite my autonomy. I hated that the one person it wanted was the one man I had spent years keeping at arm's length. I forced myself back into the bedroom. Sat on the edge of the bed. Focused on the floor. On the way the rug fibers bent. On the way the fire crackled. On anything but the way my pulse thundered. The heat spread. My skin felt too tight. Every inhale too shallow. My thoughts fragmented. And beneath it all, an ache. Not physical. Existential. As if some essential piece of me were missing and my body was screaming for it to be returned. The door chimed softly. Then slid open. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I knew. Aria. His voice. Low. Careful. Concerned. I didn't answer. Footsteps crossed the room. Stopped. Then did not come closer. He honored the boundary. Even now. You didn't come out this morning, Ronan said quietly. The sensors flagged a temperature spike in this wing. I laughed once. It came out brittle. Congratulations, I murmured. Your experiment has entered its biological phase. Silence. Then. You're in heat. Not a question. A diagnosis. I'm fine. A lie. I can smell it. My jaw tightened. Then leave. I can't. Then stay there. He did. I felt it. The space he held. The deliberate distance. Aria, Ronan said softly. You're shaking. Then stop talking. The heat surged. My vision blurred slightly. I swallowed. I will not let instinct rewrite my choices, I said. I will not let chemistry make decisions for me. I know. I am not some territorial equation. You are not. I will not be driven. You won't. The calmness of his agreement unsettled me more than any argument. You're burning up, he said. We need to lower your temperature. I am not letting you touch me. I'm not here to. Another pause. There's a medical protocol for this, he continued. Cold compresses. Fluids. Rest. Rest, I echoed faintly. Yes. The word sounded impossible. I'm going to slide a cooling pack toward you, he said. I won't cross the line. A soft sound. Fabric brushing carpet. Then nothing. I didn't look. Pride wouldn't let me. The heat worsened. My body betrayed me in small ways. My breathing hitched. My hands trembled. And beneath all of it, something far more dangerous than want crept in. Fear. Because if this continued, if the failsafe escalated, my control would not hold. Why aren't you taking advantage of this? I demanded suddenly. The words surprised even me. Silence followed. Heavy. Measured. Because you're not choosing, he said. Your body is. And you don't care about that? I care about nothing else. I laughed weakly. You staged an entire crisis to get my attention. Yes. You manipulated me. Yes. You locked me in a mountain. Yes. And now you're playing moral guardian. I am playing mate. The word settled over me like a blanket. Warm. Terrifying. I don't want to need you, I whispered. I know. I don't want to be the woman whose biology decides her life. You're not. Then why does it feel like this? Because fate doesn't ask, he said. But we still can. The heat crested. My stomach clenched. I slid back on the bed, unable to maintain sitting. The ceiling swam. Aria, Ronan said sharply. I felt him shift. Then stop himself. The restraint in that hesitation was almost audible. Look at me, he said. I turned my head slightly. He stood near the foot of the bed. Not approaching. Not retreating. His posture rigid. Controlled. And his eyes. They were no longer the cold gold of a king. They were dark. Worried. Focused. On me. Not the bond. Not his want. Me. You are not weak, he said. You are not failing. Your body is running a protocol older than law. That doesn't take your agency. It challenges it. It feels like fire, I whispered. I know. Then why aren't you ending it? Because I refuse to let our bond begin as triage. The word struck deeper than any provocation had. You think I would regret choosing you like this, I said. I think you would question it, he replied. And I will not build our future on doubt. I closed my eyes. The ache pulsed. My chest felt hollow. You are infuriating, I murmured. Yes. And you're stubborn. Yes. And you engineered this. Yes. And yet. I inhaled. And yet you're the only thing in this building not trying to take something from me. Silence. Then quieter. Aria, you don't have to do this alone. I laughed weakly. I've done everything alone. I know. You don't. I do. I opened my eyes. You watch, I said. You remember. You prepare. You learn. You built a room out of my unguarded details. That is not observation. That is care. Ronan didn't answer. He didn't deny it. The heat swelled again. I clenched my jaw. You want me to choose you, I said. Yes. Not because I'm driven. Yes. Not because I'm afraid. Yes. Not because I'm cornered. Yes. I swallowed. Then tell me the truth. About what? About why you're really here. Ronan hesitated. Just once. Then he spoke. Because I am tired of being wanted for what I command, he said. And I am terrified that the only woman who has ever challenged me will never choose me unless she is biologically forced. The admission cut through everything. I don't need your kingdom, I whispered. I know. I don't need your power. I know. I don't even need your protection. I know. Then why you? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. Because you are the only person who has ever stood in a room with me and refused to yield. Because you are the only one who has ever argued with me without fear. Because you are the only one who has ever walked away from my crown. Because when I am with you, I am not a ruler. I am a man who wants to be chosen. The heat inside me shifted. Still there. Still burning. But no longer chaotic. Focused. Directed. I am afraid, I admitted. Of what? Of what happens when I stop negotiating. Ronan exhaled. So am I. The admission shocked me more than any dominance would have. I stared at him. You are an alpha king, I said. You command armies. And none of that prepared me for this. For what? For standing still while the only person I want burns 3 steps away. The words hit like impact. You could end this, I whispered. Yes. And you won't. No. Even though it hurts. Yes. Even though every instinct you have is telling you to take. Yes. Even though your biology is screaming. Yes. Why? Ronan met my eyes. Because I want the first moment of our bond to be remembered as a choice, he said. Not a reflex. Something in me cracked. Not shattered. Softened. A wall I hadn't known was load-bearing gave way. You are not what I expected, I said quietly. I know. You are not safe. No. You are not controlled. No. But you are. I searched. Present. His throat moved. Yes. The heat surged again. Stronger. But now it was braided with something else. Understanding. Recognition. Choice forming beneath instinct. I don't know how to be soft, I whispered. I don't want soft, Ronan said. I want real. The word resonated. I don't know how to stop bracing. Then don't, he replied. Let me. Silence stretched. I inhaled slowly. The ache remained. The fire remained. But something new stood beside it. Trust. Unfamiliar. Fragile. Alive. I'm not asking you to take this away, I said. Good. I'm asking you to stay. I am. Not as a king. I won't. Not as a solution. I refuse. As you. Ronan didn't move. But something in him did. Something eased. You have me, he said. And for the first time since the storm sealed the mountain, I believed him. Morning did not arrive. It revealed itself. The storm did not fade. It retreated. The wind loosened its grip. The building's vibrations softened from violence into memory. The howling beyond the shutters dulled into distant breath. Silence replaced chaos. And silence, I had learned, was always more dangerous. I woke slowly. Not because my body was tired. But because my mind was bracing. For heat. For ache. For the biological insistence that had ruled my blood for 2 days. It wasn't there. The fire beneath my ribs had cooled into something steadier. Not gone. Not dormant. Integrated. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, cataloging sensation like I always did after crises. Heartbeat, steady. Breathing, deep. Temperature, normal. Mind, alert. Something had shifted. Not in the world. In me. I turned my head. The other side of the bed was empty. Cold. The imprint beside me already smoothing. For one suspended second, nothing existed except the hollow. Then memory rushed back. His restraint. His voice. The way he had stayed without crossing a line. The way he had looked at me like I was not a problem to solve, but a person to witness. I sat up. The suite was quiet. Too quiet. The fire had burned down to embers. The lights glowed softly at morning levels. Beyond the shutters, daylight pressed, bright enough to leak around the steel seams. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. Stood. No dizziness. No heat surge. Just awareness. I crossed the suite. The sitting area was empty. The wine bottle untouched. The book where I had left it. The door to the corridor stood open. I stepped into the hall. Ronan? I called. My voice echoed down the east wing. No answer. A flicker of unease brushed the back of my skull. I moved faster. The common area was empty. The kitchen immaculate. The bar cleared. No sign of him. No sound of movement. I walked to the main living space. The massive windows were still sealed, but the shutters had lifted slightly, allowing brilliant white daylight to slice across the floor. Snowlight flooded the room. Too bright. Too clean. I crossed to the central console. The system pulsed green. Lockdown status, clearing. Wind alert, downgraded. Communications, restoring. My stomach tightened. I turned slowly, scanning the space again. Nothing. Ronan, I said again. Louder. No answer. The thought arrived without permission. He left. Not storm-forced. Not evacuated. Chose. My chest tightened further. Ridiculous, I told myself. The man who engineered a mountain lockdown to confront you did not vanish quietly at dawn. But fear is not logical. It is associative. And silence always reminded me of rooms people didn't come back from. I moved quickly through the west wing. His bedroom was empty. The bed made. The surfaces clear. The bathroom unused. The closet untouched. No signs of panic. No signs of urgency. Just absence. I returned to the common area. The systems chimed softly. Communications online. Elevator systems resetting. External access reopening. The mountain was releasing us. And Ronan Ashborne was gone. I stopped in the center of the penthouse. The space felt enormous now. Unanchored. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from cold, but from the familiar instinct to stabilize something when no one else was doing it. He wouldn't. He wouldn't disappear. Not after everything. Unless he thought leaving was giving me control back. Unless he believed proximity had been coercive. Unless he decided that choosing meant stepping away. The thought hollowed my chest. I turned slowly. And that's when I saw it. On the black granite counter by the kitchen island sat a single sheet of thick cream stationery. Royal weight. Official crest embossed at the top. My pulse stuttered. I approached it carefully, like a device that might detonate. My fingers brushed the edge. Lifted. Blank. No ink. No message. No explanation. Just the symbol of his authority pressed into untouched paper. I stared at it. The emptiness felt deliberate. Not careless. Not forgotten. Intentional. My breath left my lungs in a rush. Of course you would do this, I whispered. Leave a page instead of a sentence. Silence instead of context. Meaning instead of comfort. You arrogant, impossible. I broke off. The ache in my chest had teeth now. He hadn't even left a goodbye. Not a political one. Not a personal one. Just a blank page. A vacuum where clarity should be. The implications spiraled. He used the storm to confront you. He forced proximity. He dismantled your defenses. He watched you burn. He refused to take advantage. And then he left. Because he'd proven his point. Because he'd gotten what he wanted. Because he'd shown he could reach you. Because he'd reminded you of what wanting felt like. Because he'd shattered your equilibrium. And now the building had opened. The world would return. And he had removed himself from the equation. I set the paper down slowly. The room felt too bright. Too empty. The systems chimed again. Security team ETA, 00:14:22 press alert detected. Air traffic approaching. Press? I moved to the console. Pulled up external feeds. Aerial camera. And froze. A black aircraft crested the mountainside, rotor slicing the air. Not coalition. Not rescue. Media. My stomach dropped. They had tracked the storm. The lockdown. The king's presence. My arrival. And now they were coming to harvest whatever narrative waited. Without him. I closed my eyes. Of course they would. I straightened. This was what I did. Containment. Spin. Damage control. I could manage this. I could handle a press intrusion. What I could not manage was the fact that the only person I wanted to face it with had vanished. I turned back to the counter. The blank page waited. You don't get to destabilize me and disappear, I muttered. The terrace doors unlocked with a soft click. Cold air rushed in. And with it? Sound. A scrape. A heavy rhythm. Metal against stone. I stilled. Listened. The sound came again. Shovel. I moved toward the terrace. Pulled the door open. Cold hit my skin. And there he was. Ronan stood knee-deep in snow, sleeves rolled, a heavy shovel in his hands. He had cleared a path from the railing to the door, carving through the storm's leftovers like the mountain itself had offended him. He looked up when he heard the door. Snow dusted his hair. Cold colored his cheeks. And he smiled. Not the alpha smile. Not the political one. The boyish, crooked one I had only ever seen in rare moments of exhaustion. "Morning," he said. "I was going to bring you coffee, but the machine and I are not on speaking terms." For a second, my brain couldn't reconcile the image. The man who commanded armies stood in the snow clearing a path like a groundskeeper. "You left," I said. He blinked. "What?" The suite was empty. The bed. The West Wing. The note. He frowned. "What note?" I stared at him. "The paper." Ronan's brows drew together. "I was trying to write," he admitted. I couldn't decide what wouldn't sound wrong. So I went to shovel before I overthought myself into silence. My chest tightened. "You left a blank page." "Yes," he said slowly. Because every version of words I tried felt inadequate. I stepped closer to the doorway. "You didn't think how that might look?" "I thought you'd wake up and find coffee." "And when I didn't?" "I was coming back." The simplicity of it undid something in me. "I thought you'd gone," I said quietly. Ronan dropped the shovel. Crossed the path. Stopped in front of me. "I didn't leave," he said. I stepped outside. "You left the space." "I stayed in the world." "You didn't say anything." I didn't trust myself to say it right. I looked up at him. "You're terrible at this." "Yes." "And you run from words." "Yes." "And you make reckless decisions." "Yes." "And you leave blank pages where clarity should be." "Yes." "And yet." I exhaled. "And yet you were digging a path back to me." Ronan studied my face. "I didn't want you to wake up trapped," he said. "I wanted the first thing you saw to be a way out." The meaning hit. Not escape from him. Escape with him. The helicopter crested the ridge. The sound grew. Ronan's head turned sharply. "Press," he muttered. "They're early," I said. "They always are." He looked back at me. "Do you want me to handle them?" The old answer rose automatically. "Yes." Let him manage. Let him absorb. Let him control. I shook my head. "No." The word felt strange. "And right." "I will." His brows lifted slightly. "Are you sure?" "Yes." I stepped onto the terrace. Cold bit my bare feet. The rotors thundered overhead. Security vehicles approached from the lower road. And beyond them, gathering like vultures, were cameras. People. Narratives. I looked at Ronan. "Stand with me," I said. He didn't hesitate. The helicopter descended. Snow spiraled. Noise swallowed the mountain. When the skids touched down, the side door slid open. Reporters surged. Cameras lifted. Questions fired. "King Ashborne. Envoy Vale. Is the treaty dead? Were you alone together? Is it true you were trapped? Was there a scandal?" I stepped forward. Ronan stayed half a step behind. Not shielding. Present. Sienna Voss stood at the edge of the gathering. Immaculate. Waiting. She smiled when she saw the cameras. Of course she had followed. She always did. She moved forward. "Aria," she called sweetly. "Oh, you look exhausted. That storm must have been terrible. The council is very concerned about optics." The word was sharpened. "You poor thing," she continued. "Being isolated with the Alpha King. I hope professionalism was maintained." The implication rippled through the press like fuel. I didn't look at the cameras. I didn't look at the council members. I looked at her. "You're worried about professionalism," I said. "Of course." I stepped closer. Close enough that her smile tightened. "Then you should know," I said calmly, "that professionalism is what kept me from removing you from that suite myself." A murmur rippled. "But since you're so concerned about appearances," I continued, "let me clarify something." I turned. Faced Ronan. And the world narrowed. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't damage control. This was choice. I reached up. Rested my hand against his chest. The cameras clicked. The air held. "King Ashborne," I said clearly, "is not a scandal." A pause. "He is my mate." The murmur became sound. Gasps. Shudders. Movement. "And I am not compromised," I continued. "I am claimed." I lifted my chin slightly, allowing the mark at my collarbone to be visible. The reaction was instant. Shock rippled. Murmurs turned into noise. Ronan inhaled sharply. I felt his hand come up, steady at my waist. The press erupted. "Is this official? When did this occur? Does this affect the treaty?" I turned back to the cameras. "The treaty stands," I said. "Because this bond was not forged in secrecy." I looked at Sienna. It was forged in truth. Then I did what no advisor would ever suggest. I leaned in. And kissed him. Not for the press. Not for spectacle. For myself. The sound vanished. The cold vanished. There was only the solidity of him and the certainty beneath my ribs. When I pulled back, Ronan's expression was unreadable to anyone who didn't know him. I knew him. He was stunned. And undone. And utterly present. He turned to the cameras. "She asked why I didn't cheat," he said. His voice carried. I told her the truth. A pause. She hadn't claimed me yet. The world detonated. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care who was watching. Because I wasn't negotiating anymore. I was chosen.